Welcome to the Smith Transport pre-trip inspection video. When exiting your tractor, be sure to face inward toward the cab of your unit. Always maintain 3 points of physical contact with the unit. Be sure of your footing as you step down to the ground slowly. It's a good idea to take your ignition key with you as well. Examine the front of your unit for any visible physical damages, including body damage, broken lamps, leaking fluids, broken mirrors, and window glass. Make sure the vehicle is sitting squarely and no suspension issues are detectable. Be alert for any additional visible effects while completing this task. The driver will then open the hood of the truck and examine the motor just in front of the driver's side door. After raising the hood, complete a visual check of your unit's engine compartment. And during this check, make sure there are no visible engine leaks that you could not identify on your initial walk around. You're looking for issues with leaking oil, water pumps, or coolant. Also inspect the frame rails going the entire length of the unit for cracks and other structural issues. Next, ensure the windshield wipers are not damaged and are able to move freely. After the windshield wiper inspection is complete, check to be sure that the oil level is full in the engine by using the vehicle's dipstick. While checking the oil level, be sure that the engine oil has not become contaminated with any foreign substances. Next, move to the engine coolant and use the visual sight glass to ensure that the engine coolant is full. Inspect the power steering fluid reservoir, making sure that the level is full as well. If any of the fluids are not at optimum levels, fill them accordingly with supplies from your unit's side box. After the fluid levels have been examined, make sure all the engine belts are intact and undamaged. Check all hoses in the engine compartment for leaks, cracks, or chaffing. All electrical connections should be validated at this juncture for solid connection. The steering components of the vehicle should be examined, including the steering wheel shaft, the gearbox, pitman arm, the drag link, the steering ring knuckle, cotter keys, tie rod, and the spindle. The unit's shocks, the leaf springs, the U-bolts, the airbags, and frame mounts now need to be verified so that there are no missing, loose, leaking, or worn parts that would negatively affect the suspension system's performance. The braking system of the tractor will now be inspected. The brake hose will be inspected for the same defects as all other engine compartment hoses. The brake chamber, a slack adjuster, brake drum, and the brake pads should be within their accepted tolerances. You will need to carefully inspect these parts to ensure their compliance with DOT regulations. Look at both steer tires and rims on your unit, keeping the hood open. Be certain that there are no bulges, cracks, cuts, or foreign objects present in the tire. The steer tire should be measured to show at least 4/32 of tread depth. The rims should be in good visible condition, showing no signs of cracks or welds. Check all lug nuts for rust and other signs that one may be loose. No signs of hub oil leaks should be present on the rim, and a metal valve stem cap must be in place. The driver now closes the hood of the truck and walk down the left side to the cab door. Examine your cab doors for defects like broken handles or hinges. Also be certain the doors latch properly. The steps of the unit need to be in good physical condition and present no immediate hazard to entering or exiting the unit. The mirror mounts should be intact and the fuel tank free of leaks. It should be properly secured. Make sure the seal on the cap is intact and prevents any leaks. Next, you will visually inspect the air tanks and make sure that it's functioning properly and there are no leaks. Open your side box and do an inventory to make sure you have a fully charged fire extinguisher, spare fuses, and 3 working triangles. Inspect the rear of the unit's cab to verify that air lines and rubber grommets are fully functional. The air lines should show no signs of chaffing or leaks. The steps, grab rail, and catwalk should be clear of obstruction and securely fastened. The rear cab suspension components should be examined for the same defects as the front suspension, such as leaks and broken or missing parts. Next, make sure there is no play in the drive shaft. This can be visually validated. The rear brakes will now be inspected using the same method and tolerances that were incorporated with the inspection of the front brakes. We will check the hose, the brake chamber, the slack adjuster, the brake drum, and the brake pads. On vehicles equipped with disc brakes, be sure to check for adequate brake pad tolerance. Once these marks become lined up, you'll know it's time for new brake pads. Check all hoses. Make sure they're not cracked or leaking. Check the connections. Make sure the connections are tight to the brake chamber and not leaking. If your unit is equipped with disc brakes instead of drums, be sure to check for defects, cracks, or missing pieces. Now we move on to the inspection of the rear rims and tires, which will all need to be examined in the same manner as the front rims and tires were. The only exception is the tolerance for tread depth in the rear tires drops from 4/32 of an inch to 2/32. Be sure to remain diligent in looking for the same types of defects on all rims and tires. Check the lug nuts to make sure they are secure and tight. Check the oil seals. Make sure there's no leaks on the rim and that the metal valve stem cap is in place. Next, we study the unit's fifth wheel platform to make sure it's been properly greased, the release handle, the hoses. Check for leaks or chafing. Check the locker pins. And check the mounting bolts. Make sure they're secured to the frame. Check the jaws of the fifth wheel for debris and free movement. Next, take a look at the rear of the unit to make sure that the quarter fenders and mud flaps are intact and properly secured. From the rear of the unit, look at the stabilizer bar for any visual defects to its structure. Check all air lines. Make sure they're not leaking. Also check the differential. Now we'll go down the right side of the unit and inspect it the same way that we did on the left side, and we'll be taking a look at the APU unit. If your truck is equipped with dual exhaust, we'll be checking both sides, make sure there's no leaks on the entire exhaust system. Before pulling the cover off of the APU, make sure the unit is turned off. Do a visual exam first, just as you did under the hood of the tractor. Make certain that no fluids are leaking. Ensure that the oil and coolant levels are full and that all belts are intact. Examine the hoses and the exhaust system for leaks, chaffing, and other visible defects. Check the exhaust system. For those equipped with this type of APU unit, we'll take a look at it by first taking the cover off. First, we'll check the fluid levels. And we'll check the oil level. The dipstick is located right behind the air cleaner. Check all the belts. The alternator belt is in the rear. The drive belt in the front. And also check the exhaust system. Check all the hoses and electrical connections. Check the circuit breakers on the go greens. And on the go green unit, you'll have an external coolant system with hoses. Make sure they're not leaking. Now moving to the interior of the truck, we'll first engage the clutch pedal of the unit and check the free play range. It should not exceed 2 inches. Next, move the steering wheel back and forth. Measure the steering wheel free play. This should not exceed 2 inches or 10 degrees. Make sure that both the city and air horns are fully functional. Start the engine of your unit. At this point, you should be certain that all gauges on the dash are now working as normal. The heat and defrost should be monitored for function. Operate the windshield wipers and make sure they're functioning properly. Next, we'll check the air brake system. With the truck in gear, release the brakes. We'll turn the engine off, but turn the key into the on position. At this time, the brake will be released. Once the air has settled, watch your